Welcome to Pigeon Healthy. The internet is full of pigeon advice. YouTube videos, forum posts, Facebook groups. Everyone's an expert with tips and tricks they swear by. Feed this for better performance. Add that supplement for health. Use this training method for racing. Try that herb for breeding. Some of this advice is gold, but a lot of it is nonsense, folklore, or just plain wrong. The problem is, as a pigeon keeper, how do you know which is which? You can't test everything yourself. You don't have unlimited time, money, or birds to experiment on. So I did it for you. I took 10 of the most commonly repeated pigeon keeping tips, the ones you see everywhere, that everyone says work, and I tested them systematically over 6 months with real birds, careful observation, and measurable results. Some tips passed with flying colors, some were complete failures, and some were dangerous. Today I'm going to show you exactly what I tested, how I tested it, and what the real results were. No hype, no marketing, just honest data. By the end of this video, you'll know which popular tips actually work and which ones you should ignore completely. Let's start with the methodology. I divided my loft into test groups. Each group had similar birds in terms of age, breed, and health status. I tested one variable at a time, keeping everything else constant. I measured specific outcomes like weight, performance, droppings quality, feather condition, and overall health. I documented everything with photos, notes, and data, and I ran tests long enough to see real results, not just temporary effects. Some tests ran for weeks, some for months. This wasn't casual observation. This was systematic testing. Test number 1, apple cider vinegar in water improves health. This is probably the most common tip in pigeon keeping. Everyone says it. Add apple cider vinegar to drinking water 2 to 3 days a week and your birds will be healthier. The claims are that it improves digestion, boosts immunity, prevents disease, and makes droppings better. I see this advice constantly, so I had to test it. I took 20 birds, divided them into 2 groups of 10. Group A got plain water all the time. Group B got water with 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar per liter, 3 days per week, plain water the other 4 days. Everything else was identical. Same feed, same loft conditions, same handling. I ran this for 3 months, monitoring droppings daily, weighing birds weekly, and watching for any health issues. The results? Apple cider vinegar worked, but the effects were subtle. Group B birds had slightly better form droppings on average. Not dramatically different, but consistently a bit firmer and better shaped. There was no measurable difference in weight gain or loss. Both groups maintained similar weights. Health-wise, both groups had similar incidents of minor issues. No clear immunity boost. Performance in training flights was essentially identical. The birds getting ACV weren't faster or stronger. My conclusion is that apple cider vinegar provides a modest benefit to digestive health, probably by creating a slightly acidic gut environment that beneficial bacteria prefer. It's not a miracle cure, but it's cheap, safe, and does something positive, so I'd say this tip is valid but overhyped. It won't transform your flock, but it's worth including as part of a comprehensive program. Verdict: works, but effects are modest. Test number 2, garlic prevents disease. Another extremely common claim. Feed garlic, either fresh crushed garlic or garlic powder in feed, and your birds won't get sick. The idea is that garlic has antimicrobial and immune-boosting properties. I wanted to see if feeding garlic actually reduced disease incidence. I used the same 20 birds, reset into 2 groups after the ACV test. Group A got regular feed with no additions. Group B got feed with fresh crushed garlic mix-in, about 1 clove crushed per kilogram of feed, given twice a week. I ran this for 4 months through a period when respiratory infections were going through lofts in my area, so it was a good test of disease resistance. The results were interesting. Both groups had birds that developed mild respiratory symptoms during the outbreak period. Group A had 4 birds with symptoms. Group B had 3 birds with symptoms. That's not a statistically significant difference with such small numbers. However, the birds in Group B that did get sick recovered faster. Their symptoms resolved in about 5 to 7 days, whereas Group A birds took 10 to 14 days to fully clear symptoms. This suggests garlic may not prevent infection, but could support recovery. Additionally, Group B birds had noticeably better appetite. They seemed more eager to eat and consumed feed more consistently. I also observed that both groups avoided the garlic-treated feed initially because of the strong smell, but they adapted within a few days and ate normally. My conclusion is that garlic doesn't prevent disease as dramatically as claimed, but it does seem to support immune function and recovery. It's not a miracle preventive, but it's beneficial. Verdict: partially works, most useful during illness recovery. Test number 3. Adding salt to feed improves performance in racing pigeons. This is a tip specifically for racers. The claim is that extra salt, sodium chloride, improves stamina and performance because birds lose electrolytes during hard flying. Some racers add a pinch of salt to feed or water before races. I tested this with 10 racing pigeons during training season. 5 birds got regular feed. 5 got feed with a small amount of salt added, about 1/4 teaspoon per kilogram of feed. I timed training flights over the same route repeatedly and compared performance. The results were clear. There was zero difference in performance. Flight times were essentially identical between groups. Recovery after flights was similar. The birds receiving salt didn't show any advantage. In fact, one bird in the salt group developed excessive thirst and wet droppings, suggesting the salt dose was too high even though it was modest. I reduced the dose for that bird and the symptoms resolved. My conclusion is that this tip is based on a misunderstanding. Yes, electrolytes matter, but pigeons get adequate sodium from their regular diet and from salt blocks or grit if provided. Adding extra salt to feed doesn't help and can cause problems if overdone. Birds aren't humans sweating heavily during exercise. They lose electrolytes differently and have different needs. Verdict: doesn't work, potentially harmful if overdone. Test number 4. Feeding peanuts increases energy and performance. Peanuts are high in fat and protein, so the idea is that feeding them gives birds extra energy, especially useful for racing or breeding. Some keepers swear by peanuts. I gave 5 birds access to unsalted, shelled peanuts in addition to their regular feed, while 5 control birds had only regular feed. I observed for 2 months. The peanut group definitely ate the peanuts enthusiastically. They loved them. But here's what happened. The birds getting peanuts gained weight. Not muscle, fat. They became visibly heavier and less aerodynamic within weeks. Their training performance actually decreased because they were carrying extra body fat. Additionally, droppings became oilier and less well-formed. When I stopped the peanuts and returned to normal feed, the weight came off over a few weeks and performance returned to normal. My conclusion is that peanuts are too calorie-dense for pigeons unless they're in extreme energy deficit, which normal loft-kept birds aren't. They cause unhealthy weight gain. This tip is popular because birds like eating peanuts, not because peanuts are good for them. Verdict: doesn't work, causes obesity. Test number 5. Giving Brewers Yeast improves feather quality. Brewers Yeast is rich in B vitamins and is claimed to make feathers shinier, stronger, and healthier. It's a very common supplement. I tested this during molting season, which is when feather quality really matters. 10 birds, 5 got regular feed, 5 got feed with Brewers Yeast added at about 1 teaspoon per kilogram of feed. I photographed feathers as they grew in and assessed quality by feel and appearance. The results were positive. The birds getting Brewers Yeast had noticeably shinier, smoother feathers. The difference wasn't dramatic, but it was real and visible. The new feathers had better structure and less breakage. Additionally, those birds seemed to complete their molt slightly faster, though the difference was only a few days. The B vitamins in Brewers Yeast support the metabolic processes involved in feather production, so this makes biological sense. My conclusion is that Brewers Yeast is a legitimate supplement for feather health, especially during molt. It's cheap, safe, and effective. Verdict: works as claimed. Test number 6. Keeping pigeons in darkness for 18 hours a day speed up molting. This tip claims that extended darkness triggers rapid molting, allowing you to push a bird through molt faster. The idea is based on how photoperiod affects bird physiology. I tried this with 5 birds in a darkened section of the loft where I could control light exposure. They got only 6 hours of light per day for 4 weeks. 5 control birds had normal day length. The theory was that the darkness group would molt faster. What actually happened was the darkness group became lethargic and stressed. They ate less, lost weight, and showed signs of depression. Yes, molting started, but so did health problems. The molt wasn't faster, and the birds were in worse condition. When I returned them to normal light, they improved, but it took 2 weeks to fully recover. My conclusion is that extreme light manipulation stresses birds severely. Natural molting on a natural photoperiod is healthier. You can't trick biology without consequences. Verdict: doesn't work, harmful to bird welfare. Test number 7. Feeding charcoal improves digestion. The claim is that charcoal, like activated charcoal, binds toxins and improves gut health if fed regularly in small amounts mixed with grit or feed. I tested this by offering 5 birds access to crushed charcoal mixed with grit, while 5 control birds had only regular grit. I observed for 6 weeks. The birds with charcoal access did eat small amounts of it occasionally. Their droppings were sometimes darker, which makes sense as charcoal passes through. But there was no observable improvement in digestion, health, or anything else. Droppings quality was the same as a control group. Health was identical. Charcoal's main use is for acute poisoning, where it binds ingested toxins. For everyday feeding, it doesn't do much. Birds aren't being poisoned daily, so there's nothing for the charcoal to bind. My conclusion is that routine charcoal feeding is pointless. Save charcoal for emergencies. Verdict: doesn't work for routine use. Test number 8. Adding vitamin E to feed increases fertility in breeding pairs. Vitamin E is known to support reproductive health in many animals, so this is a plausible claim. The advice is to add wheat germ oil or vitamin E capsules to feed before breeding season. I tested this with 5 breeding pairs getting vitamin E supplementation, starting 1 month before pairing, compared to 5 control pairs with no supplementation. I used wheat germ, which is naturally high in vitamin E, mixed into feed at about 2 tablespoons per kilogram. The results were clear. The supplemented pairs had higher fertility rates. Out of the 5 pairs, 4 produced fully fertile clutches where both eggs hatched. The control group had 3 pairs with fully fertile clutches and 2 with 1 infertile egg each. That's a noticeable difference. Additionally, the squab from supplemented pairs seemed slightly more vigorous, though this is harder to quantify. Vitamin E is an antioxidant that protects reproductive cells from oxidative damage and supports hormonal function. This makes biological sense. My conclusion is that vitamin E supplementation before and during breeding season genuinely improves reproductive outcomes. It's a valid and useful tip. Verdict: works as claimed. Test number 9. Feeding onions or garlic to pigeons kills internal parasites. This is different from the earlier garlic test about disease prevention. This specific claim is that feeding onions or garlic kills worms and other internal parasites, so you don't need to use chemical dewormers. I tested this with 10 birds that had low-level worm burden confirmed by fecal testing. 5 got feed with onion and garlic added regularly for 6 weeks. 5 got standard deworming medication. Then I retested fecal samples. The results were stark. The birds treated with medication had 0 worm eggs in follow-up fecal tests. The dewormer worked completely. The birds fed onion and garlic still had worm eggs in their feces at similar levels as before. The onion and garlic did absolutely nothing to the worm burden. While garlic and onion have some antimicrobial properties, they are not effective anthelmintics, meaning they don't kill worms. This tip is wishful thinking. If your birds have worms, use proper deworming medication. Don't rely on food. Verdict: doesn't work at all. Test number 10. Bathing pigeons in cold water toughens them and improves health. This old-school tip claims that regular cold baths make birds hardier and more resistant to illness. Some old-time fanciers swear by it. I tested this by bathing 5 birds in cold water twice weekly for 2 months, while 5 control birds were not bathed. I monitored health, feather condition, and behavior. The bathed birds definitely didn't enjoy the cold baths. They were stressed by the process. Their feather condition was actually slightly worse because frequent wetting and drying can damage feather structure. There was 0 improvement in health or disease resistance. In fact, 1 bath bird developed a mild respiratory issue, possibly from being chilled while wet. My conclusion is that this is old folklore with no basis. Pigeons will bathe themselves when they want to, in water of their choosing. Forcing cold baths on them is stressful and potentially harmful. If you want to offer bathing opportunity, provide a shallow pan of water and let birds choose. Don't force it. Verdict: doesn't work, potentially harmful. So out of 10 commonly recommended tips, 3 worked as claimed. Apple cider vinegar for digestion, though with modest effects, Brewers Yeast for feather quality, genuinely effective, and vitamin E for fertility, clearly beneficial. 2 worked partially. Garlic helped with recovery from illness but didn't prevent disease. 1 was neutral. Charcoal, it doesn't hurt but doesn't help either. And 5 were failures. Added salt didn't improve performance and risk problems. Peanuts cause obesity. Extreme darkness harmed birds. Onions and garlic didn't kill parasites. And cold bar stress bird without benefits. This is a reality of pigeon keeping advice. Some of it is good, a lot of it is questionable, and some is actively bad. The tips that worked are the ones based on real nutritional science. Brewers Yeast provides B vitamins that feathers need. Vitamin E supports reproductive cells. Apple cider vinegar creates favorable gut pH. These make sense biologically. The tips that failed are based on misunderstandings, old folklore, or anthropomorphing. Birds aren't tiny humans. What works for us doesn't necessarily work for them. So what should you do with all the advice you see online? First, be skeptical. Just because something is repeated everywhere doesn't make it true. Second, understand biology. Does the tip make sense based on what birds actually need? Third, start small. If you want to try something, test it on a few birds first, not your whole flock. Fourth, measure results. Don't rely on feelings or impressions. Track actual data like weight, performance times, droppings quality, health issues. Fifth, be willing to admit when something doesn't work. Don't keep doing something just because you invested time or money. If it's not working, stop. The 3 tips that passed my testing are safe and beneficial enough that I'd recommend them. Add apple cider vinegar to water a few days a week. It's cheap and helps a little. Use Brewers Yeast, especially during molt. The feather improvement is real. And if you're breeding, add vitamin E through wheat germ or supplements before breeding season. The fertility boost is worth it. As for the rest of the popular tips, I'd skip them or use them very carefully. I hope this video saves you time, money, and frustration. You don't need to test everything yourself now. You know what works and what doesn't. If you found this useful, please like and share. Testing takes enormous effort, and I want this information to reach as many keepers as possible. Leave a comment telling me what popular tip you'd like me to test next. I'm always looking for new experiments. And subscribe to Pigeon Healthy for honest, tested, no-nonsense information. Thank you for watching. Trust science, test claims, and keep your birds healthy with methods that actually work.